Welcome to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. I'm Richie. I'm going to be your host. Throughout the series, we're going to talk to a range of different people who will give you tools and tips to help manage your recovery. The podcast itself is being brought to you by Epic Restart Foundation, who are a national charity who support people to rebuild a positive life after gambling harm. So today on the podcast, we welcome Graeme Dodds. Graeme, you've been one of the closest people in my recovery for the last few years, and you're the last one of kind of our little group to come on the podcast. So eventually got you here, although it is a Friday night, by the way, 6 o'clock. And this wasn't where we would normally have met on a Friday night at
Definitely
6 o'clock, is it? So it shows how far we've come, both of us. So great to be here. Could you tell us a little bit about how you managed to get into recovery? Tell us a little bit about what went on in the lead up to you getting into recovery, and then what was the final straw?
So this time round was like the millionth attempt at getting recovery. Recovery for me started back in 2013 following a divorce, and about 6 months after the birth of my daughter. And I think it all stemmed from not being able to cope with the feelings and emotions that was going on at the time. Gambling was always me go-to, so to speak. And that manifested itself into drinking cocaine. The divorce left us with lots of outstanding debt, shall we say. I didn't manage it well when we were together. And I think all through my life, I've never really had any emotions or anything. I used football or other things to kind of block that out. And then when this happened, it was chaos. It worked for a couple of weeks, I could pay the bills because I had a couple of big wins. But then when the wins finally stopped, it was, I don't like this feeling. I don't like I've never experienced this sort of pain. And I didn't know what to do. So then it was self-medicating with drink and drugs. And that spiraled into 10 years of just chaos, the same cycle, the same vicious cycle over and over again.
Through that 10 years, Graeme, was the attempts at recovery? Did you try and get a grip on it? Did you, tell us a little bit about that? So,
multiple attempts. It started off, my mum and dad took us to the doctors and they referred us to the drug and alcohol services, which I would love to see it work, but it didn't. And there was times where I'd be sitting and I was getting acupuncture in my ears, playing this soothing music, and I had to go home and tell my mum and dad, that really helped, because I could see they desperately wanted me to get well, and I wanted to give them that hope, but it wasn't working. And then eventually one of the therapists there recommended Cocaine Anonymous, which was through Peter Lay at the time. And I went there, and one of the first things someone said was, listen for the similarities, not the differences. And I did the exact opposite. I sat and listened to people saying that this had happened, that had happened, and I was like, that's not me. And at that point then I decided, I'm not like these people, I don't need this. And they also said, you have to be completely abstinent. I was just convinced that my problem was just cocaine. It wasn't drink and it wasn't gambling. They just were just part of the chaos. It wasn't the issue, which we all know is not true. And I come out of my first ever meeting, I told my dad, and he sat and waited in the car, bless him. And I was like, it was really good, but they said, you can't drink. I was like, nah. I was like, I'll just do it my way. Take little bits, but I'm doing it my way. I'll still have a drink, because that's not the issue. And I didn't really last long in that recovery, shall we say. Went back out there, and it got worse and worse. I tried AA, I tried NA, and then I gave up the ghost and just tried to do it solo on my own. I could never give up all three, never.
And I think that's a big thing for people to hear is people bounce about, don't they? Bounce about and they go, oh, well, gambling's the problem, or alcohol's the problem, or cocaine's the problem. And you said there, I didn't think alcohol was the problem, it was just the cocaine. None of them things were the problem in the end, were they?
No. Someone put that the other day, getting clean and sober is easy, but it's learning to live with the feelings and the emotions, that's the hardest bit. And that was kind of when the penny dropped for me. It was actually, I was just running away from them things, and these were the
coping strategies.
The coping strategies, the wrong coping strategies, but I was a problem and not dealing with it in the right way.
And it's interesting what you just said there. I was just running away and I was just dealing with things. And these were my coping strategies. They just weren't good ones. Do you know what it is though, Graeme? At that time, they were great ones. They were the best ones you could find. They were the best ones you knew about. And they'd done the job, didn't they?
Aye.
And I always say this to people. Alcohol, drink, drugs all served me when I needed them. And I didn't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd done the job. What you're trying to do, you're trying to escape your feelings and emotions. Them things are brilliant for that. You know, what happens is though, behind escaping them initial feelings and emotions, the snowball effect, and everything just gradually gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't it? And
Definitely.
And that's the thing. Tell us about coming into recovery and kind of getting it.
So this time round, so I joined a recovery football team, and a lot of the lads were attending meetings, and I could see them doing really well, getting clean and sober, living life, gamble free. But I just had such a bad experience of it, where it was more my ego thinking like, why it didn't work, so it's a load of bollocks, this, that, and the other. And the 12 steps, all them questions you got to do, getting a sponsor. And I was like, nah, that'll not work. I'll just come here and I'll do my thing and I'll be sound. And obviously there was a relapse policy in place, so you couldn't play if you relapsed, and I hardly kicked the ball because I just kept relapsing. And eventually, like, you see the lads doing well, and I was like, I want to be a part of this, you know, like, they've took me in, they've accepted us, and I desperately wanted that. And then come that final straw, shall we say, the word I'm looking for, the rock bottom of all rock bottoms. Like, early in recovery, I remember someone saying, like, when I kept coming out, leaving the meetings, coming back in, picking up another white key ring, like, God, I must have more white key rings in my house than I could probably solve the, like, recycling issue that's going on, the amount of white plastic key rings in my house. And I remember someone saying, maybe you just haven't hit your rock bottom yet. And I looked at him and I thought, you cheeky bastard. Like, it doesn't get much worse than this, but, like, how naive was I? Like, I had a lot more flaws to fall through, and I finally did that one Thursday, driving home from work. I thought it'd be a good idea to stop over and get a couple of cans, and then it was like check my emails, and my credit limit had gone up on my credit card, so I had £600 to play with. I was like, right, just go have a couple of pints and drop the bandit. Perfect. I'll pay off some of that debt that I've accumulated over these last couple of months. And that just turned out to be the best and the worst decision I ever made, because I just hit the lowest that I've ever went. I ended up in some guy's house I'd just met for like 3 days straight, on the phone to Samaritans, because everyone had just gone home and he'd gone to bed, and I'm just sitting there and thinking, what am I doing with my life? And I thought all love was lost. I thought I'd definitely lost Susan that time. And I thought I've had my 9 lives a million times over. I thought, like, that's it. I thought my parents would never accept us again. And now, because you get these ultimatums all the time, if it happens again, that's it. And I've done that 1,000 times, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I messaged the Samaritans, and then I knocked my phone off and took some tablets. That was like, I honestly thought it was the only way I could beat this disease, and that was the lowest point. Luckily, when I come round, prior to that, I'd put a message in the group chat, the football group chat, and when I put my phone back on, a couple of lads had reached out to us, but then there was also messages of love and support from my mum and dad and from my wife, and I was like, God, people out there really do care. And then there was Ross, Dan and Craig desperately trying to get in touch with us. One of my good friends, Smig, he'd been out driving the van looking for us. And I was like, wow, there's people out there who really do care. No matter how much I let them down, they're still willing to do everything to get me well. So I reached out to Susan, replied to their messages, and I said, I need help. I really need help. But her not giving up on me was like, she'll probably never know this, but it was that hope she's kept in me throughout the whole time we've been together. That hope she's shown in me was what got me out of that house. And then obviously Ross and Michelle spoke with Susan on how to deal with it. Dan was involved, Craig was involved, and they both took us to a meeting, a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and got us back into a Cocaine Anonymous meeting. And I've never looked back since that day. It was like the worst day of my life, but also the best day of my life.
And we need to hit them times, don't we? You know, I talk about me standing on the bridge on the 19th of March 2018. It was the best day of my life. Now it was the best day of my life. At that given time, I didn't even want to live, you know. And that's sometimes where we have to go to get it, I think. What was different this time than Graeme? I know you mentioned drink, drugs, gambling, all them things. Was this the time that you put them all in the same basket?
It certainly was. Yeah, so I think I'd always kept gambling. Gambling was my true number one offender, which led to the others. But it was also my best friend. It was my escape. Like, no matter what issues was going on in my life, a lot of it was always financially. I had that little outlet of I can solve everything because I can get that big win. So that was always like, no matter how bad things got, no matter how many times the letters came through, final reminders, this, that, and the other, there was always that hope of I can fix that over one bet. So this time round, it was like, I said to Craig, like, I need to acknowledge this as well as the drink and the drugs, and all three, like you say, you have to go in that same basket. For me, you know, people mention if you have a drink and cocaine, they create their own chemical. I think I had that chemical with all three. Like, I couldn't do one without the other. And the euphoria I got from doing all three at the same time was just, like, unrivaled. I needed all three. And that was some of the toughest times, was trying to please all three of them demons with only one small pot of money, which was just chaos amongst the chaos. It was absolutely horrific. But yeah, totally just waving the white flag to all three and saying, look,
yeah, and I think that's, you know, I see a lot of people go, oh, it's just the drink, it's just the gambling, it's just the drugs, I'm okay with the rest of them. And after a while, you start to see that actually the behaviour or the relationship they have with, if they've given up gambling, the relation now they have with drink is much worse. And that was the same for me. Relationship with drugs, much worse. Why do you think you try to address the drink and the drugs, yet you didn't try and address the gambling? What was the thing that you just thought, oh, actually, was it because you thought gambling wasn't as bad, or what was it for you, Graeme, that you thought, nah, I'm still going to keep doing a bit of the gambling?
I think gambling was always my true love. It was, like I say, it was my best friend, and probably being brutally honest, I knew I could hide the gambling.
Yeah.
Like, that's hand on heart, because physically, you cannot hide the drink and the drugs. It has a physical effect on the body. So if I'd used or if I'd drunk, it was visibly noticeable. Yeah. Whereas I could gamble and no one could know. But also I carried a lot of guilt and a lot of shame with the amount of debt I'd put my parents in, and obviously the debt I'd run up in my family home with my wife and my children. So I always kind of thought, I can fix that one day with the gambling. Now, if I give that up, I can never fix that. Not thinking like a normal human being where I can just work overtime, I can get a better job, I can progress my career and earn more money. No, it was like that instant gratification, as all of us addicts do, is we want instant solutions, which gambling always offered me. Was like,
it's a big thing, that, isn't it? Instant gratification.
Yeah.
And like I said before, all of the things that we've done in our lives served us because they give us that instant gratification. And that's what we always wanted. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, instant gratification causes long-term pain 9 times out of 10.
Massive.
You know, so how did you go about being able to switch from wanting instant gratification all the time to being okay if it was uncomfortable, or being okay with being in a little bit of pain? Because it's hard, isn't it?
I'm probably still learning that, to be honest with you, Richie. It's a long process, but it's one that I'm comfortable with now. Is like, I've done years and years and years of damage and chaos to my own brain, and it's not going to be a quick fix. Like, I understand that as for as many years as I've lived that chaotic lifestyle, it's going to maybe take just as long to correct everything. I'm not going to be perfect straight away. It's going to take a long, long time.
Can I tell you a secret? You're never going to be perfect.
I'm at peace with that, to be honest with you.
You can strive. We can strive for it. But do you know what? Loads of people that I speak to, and myself, the more I understand about myself, or the more self-awareness I get, the more work I realise I've got to do. Mm-hmm. That excites me. I'm not scared of that anymore. I used to be scared. I used to be shit scared of changing or being different, or what would other people think, or the perception of me pals, you know, and that used to stop us from doing the work. Now I'm like, watch.
I thought that all the time. I had this like, what would they think? Not even knowing who they are. Just there was something in my head. They would be old friends or acquaintances. Like, what would they think if they knew I wasn't drinking? Or
do you want to know who they were for me? The people that worked in the boogies. That was one of the groups of people I was going, oh, what will they think? You know, thinking that they didn't know I had a gambling addiction, even though I'd spent every penny I'd ever had and hundreds and thousands of pounds in the bookies. There's me going, oh, I don't want them to know that I've got a gambling addiction. You know what I mean? Like looking back now, it's just absolute craziness, isn't it?
It's chaos up there.
Absolute mental.
Absolute mental. I think though, you know, I talk about instant gratification. Looking back now, I think I got a lot of instant gratification when I did finally come clean and say, look, it's all three. Mm-hmm. Like that final admittance of sheer powerlessness over all three was like one of those moments was like, it's all out there now. I've got nothing left to hide. Just totally put it out there. And I think that was a little bit of instant gratification where it was like, right, it's out there now. I've admitted defeat. And in admitting defeat, little did I know that would be the most powerful thing I ever did, was admitting, like waving that white flag.
I was talking to somebody the other day who's stopped the drink, stopped the drugs, and he said, I've shut down all my apps, bar, I think it was Sky Bet, because I like Sky Bet. But if I stop doing that, then what have I got in my life? Mm-hmm. And I was like, fucking hell, you don't know what you've got me at.
Oh, no.
But that's the thing, isn't it? When we're in that place, we're going, if we're giving all this up, my life's going to be shit. I'm going to have nothing.
Massively.
And I think, like, God, like, if I was to look back over the last 6.5 years I've been in recovery, fucking hell, what have I got in my life? It's like, it's unrecognisable. And I know this week you've just gone 2 years in recovery.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your early days in recovery. Like, what was it that worked for you in the beginning? What were the things that were important to you?
Family and connection, massively. Just knowing that love was still there and they hadn't given up hope. The hope they showed me was the hope I needed this time round, that they never gave up. And just that, going to that first meeting, that first Monday night Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I mentioned the drink and the drugs, and I just laid all my cards on the table. I said how bad it had been, and it turned a few eyes. Do you know what I mean? There's a few people like, wow, but they accepted us, and that acceptance and the love they showed us there. And even going back to Cocaine Anonymous, a few people who I'd met previously, they just welcomed us back with open arms. There was no judgment that I'd diddled off and hadn't been in years. It was just that like acceptance. And I was like, this is it. And I put everything into my recovery. I kind of jumped from the job I was in at the time before I was pushed because of my actions through the drink, drugs and gambling. So I had that time to breathe, and I needed to be taken away from society. So it was a bit like Susan had us under, I wouldn't say a lock and key, but she knew what we needed and we said, like, we just need to focus on my recovery early doors. So it was quite just removing me from society. I couldn't live in society where my head was at the time. And it was just 2 meetings a week and started the step work, and I needed that massively. And that's when the change started to happen. That's when I realised it was me that needed to change and my actions that needed to change, which was probably a hard pill to swallow at the time, where I didn't have nothing left to blame. I blamed it all in the past.
Ironic that, isn't it? Because you were normally pretty good at swallowing pills. But that said, sometimes we do need to be taken away out of our environment. And I say this to people all the time. Even if you're just struggling or having a bad day, if you change your environment, it changes the way you feel. Definitely. You know, so you doing that and taking yourself out of the normal environment you were finding yourself in, the work, the social network, the pals we call them, the associates that you had at that time, taking yourself out of all that just gives yourself a chance, doesn't it?
Definitely.
And because we don't know anything else, we sometimes need to do that. We need to take ourselves into a different environment and white knuckle it for a little bit. But like you said, you went to a few step meetings and you started looking at the steps.
And then it was like Ross had I know Craig's talked about and Trev spoke about, but Ross had the brilliant idea of the football team try this thing called Ice Guys on a Friday night. And I'd always had this massive fear of dark water, but I just thought, like, what fear's left in this world, because like I've gone through hell and back these last 10 years trying to get sobriety, and it nearly all come to an end. So I was like, what have I got to lose now? And they talk about open-mindedness at the meetings. I was like, let's give this a go. And that first ever C dip, like the buzz I got from that after was like, wow. And I was like, I can't believe I've just like done something so out there for me anyway. I remember like when Chrissy Nix originally set the bikes, guys, I remember looking at him thinking, what's that? Doing that a Friday night, like should be in the pub, this and the other. But that was how narrow-minded I was at the time, and just thick-skinned. Whereas now, like that's living that. That's
many people have called Chrissy Nix sad bastard, so I wouldn't worry about that.
With the Mac and bit in the middle. Sorry, Chrissy. But no, like obviously he was doing well, and it's mad that when you're on that side of the coin, you look at it and you think, what they're doing, are they mad going in there? But then once you try it and you have that open-mindedness to try something new. So what I'm getting at is like I was willing to try new things, and I was surrounded by a circle of, I don't think I could fail, to be honest with you. Like this circle of friends that I was invited into with the football team. Like I got introduced to yourself, Trev, Craig, Dan, Ross, like the list goes on. There's so many people there who had been in my shoes and were the shining example that you can get recovery.
And how important is that you had them guys who were just a little bit further ahead than you, who'd been through what you'd been through, but offered you hope that you could do it yourself? How important was that for you?
Oh, massive. Like in more ways than they'll ever know. Obviously, I laid all my cards on the table with them and taught them everything, and they were just non-judgmental, just constant love and reassurance and confidence that you can do it. And it was like having that old set of friends, but without the drink, the drugs, and the gambling. Like they were living this amazing life that I always thought was impossible, because everything I'd done in my life I'd associated with drink, drugs, and gambling. I didn't think you could live a life without those three things. Yet here are this circle of friends doing amazing things together and doing it with a smile on their face. And I was like, oh, I want a piece of this. Like this is it's so good.
There's a few things that you've mentioned a few times. Non-judgment, like shame and stigma around addiction in general is just, everywhere, isn't it?
Massive.
So to come into that group of friends that didn't judge you, didn't hold anything against you, what was that like?
Amazing. It was like a breath of fresh air. I think I needed that massively. Like I'd always been in, prior to the problems in becoming an addict, when I was just in me, when it was fun, shall we say, when I used socially. I think I was always a popular kid, and I thrived on the attention and this, that and the other, and then drinking drugs just stripped all that away from us, and I didn't have any of that. And yet I found this group of friends who, there was no egos, like you didn't need to be that sort of guy, you could just be me for once. I didn't need to impress them, or I think for years I wore a mask, just trying to be somebody else to fit in or to be loved and accepted. And I found this group of lads who just accepted me for who I was. And at that time I was a broken man suffering from 3 addictions, and like the friendships have just grown and grown since then.
I just want to pick up on something you said there. You said something along the lines of, I was a broken man, I was struggling, confidence, the drinking drugs had stripped it all away from us. Not many people want to focus on that in society, So if I mention gambling, everybody's like, how much money did you lose? If I mention drink or drugs, they're like, really? What else did the addiction strip away from Graeme? What were some of the things? So when you got into recovery, what were you like?
Spiritually null, physically void, mentally void. I had nothing. Like, I think the age I got into drink, drugs, and gambling was probably like where you should be learning about most feelings in your life, or just everyday manageable things like your bills and all that. And for that vast period of my life, I'd buried my head in the sand. So through major occasions in my life, I didn't experience those feelings, the hurt, the pain, even the good feelings. I just numbed all that with drinking drugs. So I just didn't have any of that. And then when you get recovery and you haven't got the drinking drugs to escape from, or the gambling to escape to, and you're just left with these feelings, you're like, what's this I'm feeling now? But you've got this circle of friends, you can ask them and say, what the fuck And
It's true though, isn't it?
ah,
It's really true, you know. One of my very first meetings, Richie, be careful. What do you mean, be careful? Best thing that'll happen is you get your feelings back. Worst thing, get your feelings back. And they're right, you know. And that first 6-12 months, when you've got to not bury your head in the sand and face things head on, that's tough, isn't it?
massively tough.
What feelings came for you then?
I mean, guilt was second to none. Fear. I think it was a lot of fear of relapse. Because the better I was getting, I was thinking, kind of been here before, not doing as well as I was, but then the hope you build up in others, the fear of crushing their hope was probably worse than how I would feel myself. Oh God, I learned like empathy, because I think I'd always wanted the empathy. Like it was always the poor me cry. Do you know what I'm like? And that's horrible to say, but when you're that low and that down, and you kind of want the attention, and then if something bad's happened to somebody else and you have to show that empathy, I didn't know how to do it. I just didn't have it in me toolkit.
And I think that's okay to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, you were the victim, weren't you?
That's the
And
word
I think
was
that's what it is, isn't it?
Massively,
I'm the
aye.
victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim. Oh, fuck, I need to take personal responsibility for myself.
Yeah.
Oh, this is different.
Massively.
You know, and that's kind of what happens with most people that I see in recovery is victim, 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 victim. Right, I'm ready to take responsibility for myself and for my recovery, and I'm going to grasp it with two hands, and, you know, every opportunity that comes along, I'm going to experience it for whatever it is, good or bad, and if it's good, I'll keep it. If it's bad, I won't. And I think that for me just sums up what it should be. And when I see people do well, that's generally what they've done. Is just went, right, no, I am gonna give this a go. Something else you said, getting in the water when you were scared of the dark and doing that sort of stuff. You done that shit scared, didn't you?
Oh, aye.
Do you know what I mean? So you were still willing to do stuff and have the courage to do stuff and willingness to do stuff. And I think they're so important, them words, courage, willingness, you know, open-mindedness you mentioned before. They're so important for people that they have that in recovery, because once you have that closed mindset, or you go back to being the victim, that's when you're hot. That's when you're more risk as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
You know, so I love the fact that you mentioned those things, but you've had the courage to do loads of stuff. Tell us some of the other stuff you've done in recovery since over the last 2 years.
What a journey, so obviously when I came into recovery, I was sitting at something like 122 kilogram, and then we started like a little fat club chat, and Craig got us into running. So I couldn't run a bath. It was so bad. Like, I was the first one out of the bleep test in pre-season. I was so unfit. I mean, my life choices didn't help nothing, but I was a big lad, and I just started doing 1 kilometre runs, 2 kilometre runs, and then signed up to do a 10k with Ross. I remember saying to Craig, like, I'd love to be able to run a 10k before Christmas maybe, and then like went and smashed that in September. Then the next thing I know, Trev's got us a space in the Great North Run. I was like, I can't do that, man. But just like the little bits of prayers from the lads, and then seeing the other lads doing it as well, it was like, we can do anything here. Like just the belief everyone instilled in you. So I ended up running half marathon, which I thought was like the pinnacle of running. And then, as you well know, this year we went on to run the Edinburgh Marathon together, which mind blowing when you look at where I was on that.
122 kilograms, where you're at now, sitting here?
80
kilograms.
Around 80 kilograms.
You know, that's some journey just in itself. But
crazy.
The things that you've managed to do by losing the weight and looking after yourself and, you know, going through all of that, I think it's amazing. I think, honestly, it is. I think, for me anyway, we ran the marathon and I was like, oh, fuck that. I'm sick of that shit now for a little bit. And then I'm like, right, what's next?
Aye, definitely.
And that's what it is, isn't it? It's like, where am I going to put my attention now? Because I think it's so important we have that.
I was just about to say it. And like, I'll accept that I've got this obsessive personality, but I no longer obsess over drink, drugs and gambling. And I'm more than happy to put that energy elsewhere. Wouldn't like to use the word obsessive, although that's what it is. But we'll say positive energy. Like,
Let's just call a spade a spade. You know, we can pussyfoot about these things, but actually we are, aren't we?
Oh, massively,
we are
aye.
obsessive.
Like,
That's the truth of it.
The journey to the marathon, like the running was so obsessive. Like it was bad, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And the bond it built in our little group and crossing that line together was like, that's like, still gets us emotional now. It was like one of the, you just never thought in a million years, like from where I was, that I could achieve something like this. And it is 26.2 miles, some achievement. Like and doing it with your best friends who were all in recovery. Like,
I noticed how you haven't signed up to the 35 or 100 mile ultra marathon we've stupidly signed up for. What stopped you doing that?
Do you know what? In my first year of recovery, I was just willing to try everything and just get involved with whatever everyone else was doing, and I fell in love with running. There's no two ways about it. But my true passion was always weightlifting. So I said, like, once for me, like running that marathon's the pinnacle, and I just want to have that memory of me running to be that. Did I enjoy it? Probably not. Like, it was with me dodgy hip, like I was in agony, as you well seen, for a lot of it. But I thought, I've done that in year one. Let's try something new, and I'm putting the energy into weightlifting, which was what I loved. It was what I want to say it got me through, but I was struggling back then. But following on from my divorce,
it helped, yeah.
It was.
And do you know what I love about
escape.
that? I always talk about recovery is about finding your authentic self.
Definitely.
So although we're pals and we've got a really good support network, you don't have to do everything everybody else is doing, you know. And that was for me as well. Last year I was like, right, I've done the running. What can I do that's a little bit different? You know, so I've signed up to do the duathlons and triathlons and stuff like that, and it just gives me a bit more variety. It's still a bit of running, so I'll still do some of the running stuff, but actually learning. I can't swim for shit, by the way, so I've signed up to do an Ironman next year, 2.4 mile swim. I'm lucky if I can do a length in the pool without fucking dying, you know. So that's going to be fun when you're in a lake in Northumberland and it's freezing cold. But that's the joy, is go and learn something new.
Definitely.
That's the challenge. That's the bit that's challenging for me. Doing 140 miles on a bike, running and swimming, I don't find that a challenge. It will be a challenge, but I don't see it as the challenge. The challenge for me is doing the 2 mile swim at the beginning, you know, and I think we've got to have them things.
That's what I was going to say. It was like, yes, the running was a challenge at first, and then I've done that and I'm like, right, what's next? I think I'll always kind of need something new with the challenges, because I've just got one of those brains where I've done that now, what's next? I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, let's see how long the weightlifting goes, and then we'll go on to the next thing. Like, at the minute, it's just lifting weights and football, and I've finally found playing football with a smile on my face again. So, like, that's what I'm putting everything into at the minute.
And so let's get into the football a little bit. So, obviously played football in year one. That football team, you know, fell apart a little bit. Playing on a Saturday was difficult to get team out and stuff, so that fell apart. But then, since you've joined a new football team, which I'm dead excited about, because Epic Restart Foundation have got a program called Reach, and Reach is about trying to raise awareness and understanding of gambling harms, but also pathways into recovery. And I think it's really important that people have an understanding of that, because even if they don't struggle, somebody that they know might. And if they can then signpost or just even know how to hold space so somebody can explore that, I think it's really beneficial for most people to know that. Part of that program, we've decided to go into partnership with Connect Toon, who are the football team that you play for. And for me, it excites us because we're going to be on the front of your shirt, and this football team is a social inclusion team, and it's for anybody who just feels excluded for any way, shape or form. So there's lots of people in recovery, you know, people struggling with their mental health, all that sort of stuff. Socially, it's such a good thing for people, isn't it, to be a part of?
Definitely.
So for us to be involved, I'm proper excited about it. And the fact that, for me, football and the circles of football were so closely linked to my addictions, you know, the drink, the drugs, the gambling. Every 100%. Dressing room I went in, it was full of cocaine, it was full of alcohol, and there was people putting bets on all over the place. So now to know that there's a football team out there for people that can still go and play the game that they love, but they're not exposed to all of that stuff, I think it's just such a good thing. You know, tell us a little bit about your experience of joining that team and what's going on with it now.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, obviously, that team, the original team, I would go as far as to say saved my life. If it wasn't for the guys that set that team up, I probably wouldn't be here. And that's not a stretch to say that. Like, that's a real possibility. I found my way back in recovery through that. And for me now to be vice captain of that team, with Craig as the captain, to think that I can have the same effect on somebody who's coming through the doors, like, could be in the exact situation I was, to think that we can recreate that, not just to one lad, but to a couple of lads, and they can get their life back, is like that's what it's all about. Like, you know, there's a saying, like, you can only keep what you have by giving it away, and that's what we do. Every time we play, it's like that connection. That's hence the name of the team. But like, it's such a special team. Lads from all walks of life, like you say. We've got gambling, drink, drugs. We've got lads early doors, lads with long time recovery, lads just with mental health. But we're all there for each other. And like what I always say to the lads is, like, we've fought way harder battles off the pitch than what we're ever going to face on the pitch. And like, not having that environment you spoke about of going to the pub after, it's just like a godsend. Like, it definitely for me, like, you think of football, it does go hand in hand with drinking, gambling, unfortunately, and I couldn't I couldn't play for a normal pub team in my current situation, definitely not. So to have that outlet and to be able to pass on what we're going through to the newer lads, and obviously with your epic on the front of the shirt, that's a great conversation starter. Like, it literally just happened at the weekend. One of the lads said, like, "Oh, what's epic?" And it turns out that he admitted that he'd lost quite a sum of money that last month gambling. And I think we're seeing more of that. There's more lads coming through the door with gambling-related harm and problems. So to have Epic representing us and in partnership, something we're really looking forward to, and I cannot wait for yourself to come along and do the talk, and hopefully we can get some of the lads into Epic and to go on some of the trips that you've organised and the events, and they can see what we've got and the sort of life we're living without.
Yeah, and do you know what I love about it? Like, there's a good handful of the lads have all been through Epic programs, and they've done some of our events and stuff like that, and all of them get so much from it. But when I spoke to you at the weekend, and you were like, "Oh God, there was a lad, he came, he was asking what it was about," I was just like, the smile on my face was just amazing, because that's what it's all about. Because this social inclusion football team doesn't mean everybody's clean from everything, doesn't mean everybody's abstinent from everything. It means they've identified that alcohol's a problem, so they've come into recovery, and then you get into recovery, and then you build your self-awareness a little bit, and then you realise your relationship with food might be a little bit out, or your relationship with sex might be a little bit out, your relationship with gambling. And it's just having that ability to raise your self-awareness, and then having other people from all different places and that you can turn to. And the fact that, somebody said, "Oh, what's Epic?" "Oh, gambling harm charity." "Oh, fucking hell, I've lost $4,000 this week," blah, blah, blah. Conversation starter. That Definitely raises his self-awareness now for him to go, do I have an unhealthy relationship with gambling? I've stopped the drink, I've stopped the drugs, great, but do I now have an unhealthy relationship with something else? Okay, doesn't need addressing. And that's up to him. That's up to nobody else. But hopefully it's planted a seed, hasn't it?
Definitely.
And I love that.
And we're the masters of substituting one for another one. Like, as addicts, that's all I did. And if you can help one lad recognise that he is swapping, maybe he's admitted he's got a gambling problem, but then he'll push that towards the drink or the drugs. You can come and speak to any one of us and stop him going down that route that so many of us did.
Yeah, do you know how it is? I love that as well. I really do. And because football was obviously a massive part of my life, now to do the work I do, that's my biggest passion on the planet, is the work that I do. And anybody that knows us will know that. Does it become obsessive? Probably. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, isn't it? I've swapped the drink and the drugs for work. Same thing, I get a buzz from seeing other people do well. Definitely. The buzz I got when you rang us and said, "Oh, I was a conversation starter," I was like, "It's only the first week if you're having the strips on, like, Class. This is mint," so I do get a buzz out of that. I think I've got to be careful, just like everything. You've got to have your boundaries in place, you've got to look after yourself. But looking forward to coming in and doing a bit more work with you as well. I think that'd be good.
What's interesting as well, obviously we play in your standard Sunday League team, and there's often you know, when the ball goes out of play, you be standing on the halfway line and you're speaking to the other team. A lot of the lads ask, what's the inclusion team? Because they're so just null of the idea, like they've never heard of it. So then you have a bit chat about it and you tell them your story. And I think when you've got epic on the front, it's a matter of time before an opposition player says, what's epic? And bearing in mind, these lads will be going back to a pub with bandits and drink and drugs. And God knows how many people it's just going to have. It's the ripple effect, isn't it? So
yeah, and that's what
I
say this to everybody that works in our organisation. Never underestimate the work that you're doing, you know, because you might have a conversation and you might walk away and go, they didn't get it, you know. Yesterday, I delivered a workshop to 145 students at Sunderland College. Shitting it, of course I was, do you know what I mean? I'd done two sessions to 70-odd kids in each. Half the kids probably didn't want to be there and listen, but when you talk about it, they engage a little bit, you know, and I was like, well, I could look at this and go, well, that was a waste of time. Or I could look at that and go, do you know what it is? If one of them kids uses something I've said in their life at any point, then it was worthwhile doing.
Definitely.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? Just planting seeds, constantly planting seeds. And if the seed grows, it grows. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Definitely.
You know, and I think that's the joy of what we do. And that's the joy of recovery as well, you know. And
like, I love looking at that team and I see so many lads coming in who they are like the version I was when I first walked in. Like, my fitness isn't quite there, no confidence on the football pitch whatsoever. And then watching them grow week by week, it's like I'm getting a little bit of a buzz from it, and I'm like, wow, like, yeah. And they'll get to a point where they're now established in their recovery and they've got the fitness up, and then they'll be helping the next level come along, and it's just gonna keep going and going. And
yeah, and do you know what it is though? You are now that hope and inspiration that you were getting from other people 2 years ago. Do you know what I mean? And that's the truth of the thing.
I never in a million years thought, like, when I first entered recovery, like, when I first joined that team, I just so wanted to fit in and to just to play and enjoy it. And I was so bad and I had no confidence and felt like I didn't belong. And like, just all them negative thoughts. But then you just keep showing up, keep putting the work in and trusting those that are around you and follow their lead. And anything's possible. Look what it led to, like the marathon and the weight loss.
What you've just said there, that's recovery though, isn't it? Keep showing up, put the work in, listen to some advice and support from other people.
Yeah, true.
That's it. That's life. You know, you don't have to do it on your own. I say this all the time. Don't have to do it on your own. One of the things we always end with, Graeme, is what's 3 to 5 things that are in your toolkit for recovery? So what's 3 to 5 things that are just so important to you now?
I think I start off with open-mindedness. If I wasn't open-minded at the start, I wouldn't have found the cold water. I wouldn't have joined the football team or had that confidence to go on and meet the gentlemen and the circle of friends I've been in. 100%. I think because I was so closed off and narrow-minded in my addiction, that open-mindedness I didn't get clean and sober to be chained to anything. I got clean and sober to be free. And if I've got that open-mindedness, like, I'm free to do whatever I want, and I can put my mind to do whatever I want. If you have that belief, then you kind of go far wrong.
Love it.
My family, 100%. If it wasn't for Susan standing by us and my parents and my kids, there's not a chance in hell I'd be here now. I couldn't have done it without them. When I put my wife through, she had any opportunity to walk away, but she seen the good in us, and I never thank her enough.
Do you know what? One of the things that makes me smile the most, like when I look on social media and stuff like that, is seeing you with the kids and Susan and on family holidays and, you know, going to trips to Legoland. Do you know what I mean? It's simple things like that, and I love that, me, because I know where you were and I know what your life looked like, and now I see that and I'm like, fucking hell, man, it's just mint. It's class. And then also, I think a big thing to mention is a mortgage, new house.
Crazy. But I certainly didn't think that was ever a possibility. Certainly not 2 years in recovery. But again, like with Susan by my side, and she's like the calm
the
head.
Gaffer.
She is the gaffer. But what we've been through together, all my doing, the financial problems I put on us, and the mental strain I put on our relationship, and not being present. Like, to be in a situation where you are now, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. That's another gift of recovery, isn't it? Being able to, like we're about to complete, I think it'll probably happen in the new year, on like our dream forever home for our little family. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's the next journey, isn't it? So
100%,
I
yeah.
might get obsessed with DIY and paddling.
If you do, mate, I've got a few jobs. So what would be number 3? What was 3?
So we've got open-mindedness, family, willingness. I think that's the one thing that I never gave up. Like, I tried getting recovery 10 years ago, but I would do 6 months, slip up. But I kept coming back. I kept chipping away. Like, yes, it took longer than anyone would have liked, but I never gave up. I always had that willingness, and that's the willingness that I put in anything I put my mind to now, like the running or the weight loss. Like, I've always got that willing, and God knows what I'll put that willingness into next. And I would say honesty as well, because as an addict, I was the master liar. Like, the lies that rolled off my tongue, I would tell a lie even though I didn't need to tell a lie. Like, I would buy something and I'll go home and tell Susan it was 20 pence cheaper than what I actually paid for it, just because I was so used to lying. So breaking free of those old habits is massive. Just having that honesty, and you just feel so, the word I'm looking for, it's just the right...
Liberated?
Yes, it's the right way to live your life now. Like, I've spent far too long living in the darkness. So
It's a nice place to be, isn't it? When you don't have to look over your shoulder all the time.
No.
You don't have to second guess what I said before. Do you know what I mean? Like,
remember
what did
the
I say?
lies.
Oh God, tripping yourself up and then backtracking and digging the hole deeper.
definitely.
It's horrendous, isn't it?
And I'll finish on connection, obviously, because if it wasn't for the lads pulling together and getting me out of that shithole I was in, shall we say, on that final bender, and all the lads rallying around and pulling us through from there, then certainly wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have found friends for life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't...
Unlucky.
No, definitely not, man. It's, do you know this here, like, I remember when we first meeting, someone said you can live your life beyond your wildest dreams, and back then I was thinking fast cars and big houses and loads of money, and it's not that at all. It's me family, me friends, and doing things with a smile on my face.
Simple things, isn't it?
Aye. And I've got that today. I am living my life beyond my wildest dreams. It's like, can't even put it into words.
No.
So grateful, and long may it continue.
Yeah, and what a word to finish on. Gratitude, isn't it? And I think that's what I see in you now. You know, just a life full of gratitude for the things you've got, for the family you've got, for the support you've got, for, you know, what you've managed to do in 2 years is incredible, mate. So
Appreciate that.
well done, mate. Thank you for joining us on a Friday night. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your friendship.
Cheers,
Well
Richie.
done, mate.
Thank you for having us. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. If you took something positive from it, then why not subscribe? If you or somebody you know has been suffering gambling-related harm, why not head over to our website where you can join our community? The link is in the show notes.